the outbreak of war, Wittgenstein returned to Vienna and immediately enlisted as a volunteer in the Austrian army. He was on active service within 10 days.
The war saved my life. I don't know what I'd have done without it. I've lived through dreadful scenes. No sleep for 30 hours. I'm feeling very weak and can see no external help. Now I should have the chance to be a decent human being, for I am standing eye to eye with death.
For the first few months of the war, it was still possible to write to him and to hear from him. But before long, this became impossible. He later told me that once in a village on the Russian front, he chanced upon a bookshop in which there was only one book. This was Tolstoy on the Gospels. He bought it and was much impressed by it. He read it and reread it, and thereafter had it always with him, under fire and at all times.
What do I know about God and the purpose of life? I know that this world exists, that I am placed in it like my eye in its visual field, that something about it is problematic, which we call its meaning, that this meaning does not lie in it, but outside it, that life is my world, that my will penetrates the world, that my will is good or evil, therefore that good and evil are somehow connected with the meaning of the world. The meaning of life, in other words, the meaning of the world, we can call God. Winter is setting in. Once again, no clarity of vision. Yet I am so obviously on the point of solving the most profound problems, so much so that the solution is practically under my nose. The thing is, my mind is simply blind to it just at this moment. I feel that I am at the very gate, but cannot see it clearly enough to be able to open it. This is an extremely remarkable state, which I have never experienced so clearly as at present. Yes, my work has broadened out from the foundations of logic to the nature of the world. A man who is happy has no fear, not even in the face of death. Only a man who lives not in time, but in the present, is happy. For life in the present, there is no death. Death is not an event in life. It is not a fact of the world. Dear gracious lady, today I received your kind letter with the sad news of David's death. David was my first and my only friend. The hours I have spent with him have been the best of my life. Daily have I thought of him and have longed to see him again. God will bless him. If I live to see the end of the war, I will come and see you and we will talk of David. One thing more. I have just finished the philosophical project on which I was already at work in Cambridge. I had always hoped to be able to show it to him sometime, and it will always be connected with him in my mind. I will dedicate the book to David's memory. Dear Russell, I am a prisoner of war in Italy since November and hope I may communicate with you after a 3 years interruption. I've written a book called Logisch-Philosophische Abhandlung containing all my work of the last 6 years. I believe I've solved our problems, finally. This may sound arrogant, but I can't help believing it. I've got the manuscript here with me. I wish I could copy it out for you, but it's pretty long and I would have no safe way of sending it to you. In fact, you would not understand it without a previous explanation, as it's written in quite short remarks. This, of course, means that nobody will understand it, although I believe it's all as clear as crystal. I will publish it as soon as I get home.
Wittgenstein was finally released in August 1919, but it would be another 2 years before his book would find a publisher. Meanwhile, Wittgenstein and Russell met in Holland to discuss the book.
I feel sure it is a really great book, though I do not feel it is right. I told him I could not refute it, and that I was sure it was either all right or all wrong, but it would take me many years to decide this. This, of course, didn't satisfy him, but I couldn't say more.
This book will perhaps only be understood by those who have themselves already thought the thoughts which are expressed in it, or similar thoughts. It is therefore not a textbook. Its object would be attained if there were one person who read it with understanding, and to whom it afforded pleasure. The book deals with the problems of philosophy and shows, as I believe, that the method of formulating these problems rests on the misunderstanding of the logic of our language. Its whole meaning could be summed up in the following words. What can be said at all can be said clearly, and what we cannot talk about we must pass over in silence.
It's incredibly difficult. He says whatever can be said clearly. Well, I mean, one has to subscribe to a particular definition of clear if one's going to say that the Tractatus is clear. It's for one thing very technical. It makes use of the most advanced logical investigations of Russell, so that, I mean, that in itself makes it rather difficult. But the way in which Wittgenstein puts it is gnomic, to say the least. And even and a few years later, when the book was being translated into English, and the translator asked Wittgenstein what he meant by various things in German, Wittgenstein said he himself had forgotten, or didn't understand, or couldn't imagine how he could have been. I mean, the kind of thing that he often said, he couldn't imagine how he could have been such a fool as to say this, that, or the other, so he can't have meant what it looked as if he meant. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that anybody should go to the Tractatus for illumination or for anything except possibly the odd bit of inspirational reading on the last 3 or 4 pages, which deal with ethics and aesthetics. The rest of the book is totally obscure and has generated a most enormous amount of commentary by people trying to understand it.
We feel that even if all possible scientific questions be answered, the problems of life have still not been touched at all. Of course, there is then no question left, and just this is the answer.
Wittgenstein's fundamental interest in philosophy the whole of his life was in the relationship between language and the world. I mean, we take it that there's a world out there independent of us, and we've evolved a language for describing it. And in the Tractatus, Wittgenstein makes a very